mass casualties will be inevitable. Well, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says the US is the only country in the world that can stop Israel from attacking Rafah. And President Biden has told Israel to go no further. But can he really stop them? And should there be consequences if Israel does ignore the US and presses on with an invasion, despite its most important ally not offering support? Well, to debate this, I'm joined by the Egyptian podcaster Rahma Zein and by the son of Hamas's founder and former Palestinian militant, Mosab Hassan Yousef. Well, welcome to both of you, both returning to Uncensored. Let me ask you first of all, if I may, Rahma Zein, since we last spoke several months ago about all this, this war has continued to rage and tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza. And it's quite likely, if there is a full-scale invasion of Rafah, that tens of thousands of more civilians may die in the process of Israel, as they put it, getting rid of Hamas in its entirety. What is your view of where this war now is?
It's sad to see that a few months after, we're regurgitating and having to repeat the same things that we've warned about since day one, that things are getting out of hand, that at one point do you start calling someone who keeps inciting these war crimes a criminal. So not having held them accountable from day one has led to the audacity and the confidence that we are witnessing in the crimes. And just as you had stated, now that there might be further violence onto Rafah, you don't know if the US is even able to stop them. And we mention Gaza, but we don't even mention the West Bank. We don't mention what's happening in other places. And again, this allowing them to continue with their blatant war crimes that, by the way, their soldiers are filming and sending them to one another on Telegram channels and other social media channels, just goes to show to what extent they are confident to continue as such. And it's scary. We've seen news that probably the ICC is going to be calling Netanyahu in as a criminal and for trial, and the US is aiming to stop that. At one point, you have to take a stand that enough is enough. It is sad that we are repeating what we had been saying from day one. Okay,
let me bring in Mosab Hassan Yousef for your response to that. I should point out that the ICC is not just threatening, apparently, to bring in Israeli leaders, but also Hamas leaders. Mosab Hassan Yousef, you said, I think, in the Times of Israel last week, we need to go into Rafah now, not tomorrow. What are we waiting for? We finish Rafah, we finish Hamas. This will remove them from power, which will be the first step towards peace. Of course, the contrary view to this is that if Israel does go hard into Rafah to try and eliminate Hamas completely and kills potentially tens of thousands more civilians, that the global support for Israel will completely evaporate. And many people will view what is happening there as a war crime. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I don't think Israel should compromise its security because of global pressure, because this global pressure, sooner or later, is going to go away. Now, people are traumatized by the tragedy of Gaza, and many people are making irrational decisions. In my opinion, if we don't end Hamas and remove them from power, like at least to remove them from power, we are going to have many other wars. This is not Hamas' first attempt to take hostages and to take civilians as human shields. They've done this many times already. And I don't think that we need to give Hamas one more opportunity to destabilize the region and create a major war like this.
But is there not a danger, Mosab, that by doing this the way Israel is doing it, by flattening most of Gaza in the process, by killing so many civilians, including women and so many children, because of the age demographic of Gaza, with half the people there being children, is there not a danger that by trying to do what you've just said, in trying to get rid of Hamas, which many people, I'm sure, in Israel would love to do, and I understand completely why they have a desire for that to happen, that by doing it, you actually end up achieving the opposite of making Israel more secure, that you create a whole new generation of people radicalized by losing their children, their mothers, their wives, and so on. And they become even more determined to exact revenge.
Yes, well, Israel is fighting for its very existence. And I am also fighting for my very existence. When there are people out there who want you to cease to exist, this is when they push you to the corner and you have no other choice but to fight. I'm in the same position. How it feels like when you have hundreds of millions of people who sentenced you to death because of false narratives. And this is why we have this trouble in the United States and a global chaos. Because people are in denial of the truth that Israel is not targeting civilians on a purpose. They are not killing in Gaza for sport. This is what Hamas did on October 7. It was an actual genocide that the world doesn't want to admit. Now, even though the ICJ judges, they say it was not a genocide. What's happening in Gaza is not a genocide. This is what the judge say. But then we have all the wannabes and the social media warriors and the low-grade journalists still in public that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And we simply say it's collateral damage. Two different things.
Okay. Rahma Zein, here's my question for you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, let me just ask you first of all, what should Israel have done after October the 7th? If not go after Hamas, the people who perpetrated it?
I just need to respond. Mr. Hassan, I truly do apologize that your type of relationship with your father has led you to this quest to condone the annihilation of your own people. I truly am sorry for that. But just as you said, it is not about you. Unfortunately, what we're seeing today and how we're seeing it, it is bigger and it is older than Hamas. When you look at the Palestinians, predominantly, for example, yesterday there was one protest with predominantly Christian Palestinians. It is much more than what we are seeing today. The right of return, the fact that, you know, it was actually quite interesting. You have some Zionists here telling the pro-Palestinian protesters, go back home. And their response is, we want to. So come join our protest so that we can have the right to return, end the siege. Whatever you do, and you just said, you know, you have, at one point you get so oppressed, there, you have to fight back. You just said that. So what ends up happening, and you have to understand that, as everyone, and Pierce, on your show, so many people have said the same thing. You are going to keep having more resistance as long as you don't do something about it. And you keep speaking about the hostages. What about those that are being abducted from the West Bank? What about those that are in prison? What about the children that are in prisons? At some point, you have to stand up and say that this cycle has to end. And how does it end? By changing your tactic, by putting those that are the perpetrators accountable. And you, sir, are stating that it is not a genocide. It is, even the intent for genocide would label it as a genocide, which we have seen from occupation leaders calling them subhuman, Ben Gavir asking for a nuclear bomb to be dropped at them. And I wish to reiterate, I understand that you have had your personal issues, but like you said, it's not about you. It's a collective movement to end the cycle of violence.
Okay, let me give...
And you need to realize that.
Okay, let me give Mosab a chance to respond. I mean, the suggestion is that you're driven by personal enmity because of your family situation, with your father being one of the founders of Hamas, and you've since renounced that side of your life and that part of your family. What do you say to that charge that somehow you're driven by that more than anything else?
Right. Well, it is not only personal, it's fundamental. What I did during the second Palestinian Intifada, I risk my life on a regular basis to save human lives from Hamas brutal suicide bombing attacks, because Hamas terrorism did not start on October 7th. We're talking about waves of suicide bombing attacks that targeted civilians indiscriminately, where Jewish, Christian, Arabs, Muslims were killed during Hamas attacks. So our job was to stop Hamas from blowing up things. Buses, markets, beaches, beach houses, they targeted everywhere. Hamas' strategy of using civilians or targeting civilians is not a new thing. Now, for me to be sentenced to death for saving a human life because there is a belief system that says so, well, I totally reject that. And they want me to cease to exist. This is not a relationship between father and son. And by the way, I don't need your pity. My relationship with my father was an excellent relationship. I loved my father and he loved me. I'm sure he still does love me. But this is where we draw the line. When the higher interest of humanity is at risk, when people kill hundreds and thousands of civilians by the name of religion and by the name of ideology, somebody has to stand up. I am a son of that conflict and I know exactly what's going on there, not only from the Palestinian point of view, but also from the Israeli point of view. Then you invite me to come join a revolution. What revolution you are talking about? You are just creating chaos. It's the revolution only for the sake of revolution. At some point, some 30 years ago, I believed, just like you. Today, I know a different truth. And I don't advocate on behalf of a revolution that does not have sight, that does not have any moral compass. That is a revolution only for the sake of revolution. So before you tell me about your revolution and about your protest, tell me about your objectives. What's your goal? What's your agenda? What's your agenda? Who is your leadership? The American parents have the right to be concerned when they see masked men on campuses. We don't know who the hell they are. They could be activists and they could be the devil. So parents have the right to say, we don't want masked men with foreign agendas on our campuses because you don't have a leadership. And tomorrow, if the shit hit the fan, who is going to be held accountable for this situation? Who do we go after? Why your protest is not registered according to the American laws? You are just creating chaos, borrowing some victim narrative from the Middle East and trying to Americanize it, trying to globalize it. And what we say, as a person who lived the 1987 Intifada, we don't want Intifada in America, we don't want Intifada in the West, and we most certainly don't want a global Intifada.